Hey, what's going on, guys? Daniel from ModBot here, and I am really excited to bring to you this project I've been working on for the last week and a half, which is a custom dock for my Nintendo Switch using a 3D printed base and a CNC milled piece of acrylic that has the Hylian crest from Legend of Zelda in it. I think it turned out awesome, and this is definitely one of the funnest projects I've done in quite a while. So in this video, I'm going to show you guys how I made this in my room. So let's go ahead and get into it. So I went online and found an image of the Hylian crest, which I then imported into Photoshop. All I did in Photoshop was use the eraser tool to remove the white background and make it transparent on black. I then saved this as a PNG file, and I was done in Photoshop. After that, I hopped over to Adobe Illustrator. I then dragged in that PNG file that I created, and very simply did an image trace and expand to create an SVG file of this crest. I was using an online PNG to SVG converter before, but using Adobe Illustrator is a lot better and a lot more precise. And if you have the option to use Adobe Illustrator, I highly recommend it for creating SVGs from image files. It is a very easy and seamless process. So once I had the SVG file, I hopped over to Carbide Create and I opened that SVG file. I then positioned it in the top portion of my stock because this is where I was planning on cutting from. Reason being is that the Nomad can cut 8 by 8 inches and my stock was 8 by 10 inches, so I needed to have the front door on it open while cutting. Then I created a rectangle around the whole crest SVG, and this is the size of the Nintendo Switch, the front faceplate of the dock. So I went ahead and did that and just made it a little bit deeper because I was going to have this standing up in the 3D printed stand. Then I just put in all my settings for the stock. I measured with my calipers the depth of it, which ended up being around 3 millimeters. I think I put it a little bit more than that just so that way it would definitely cut through. I also put the 0 offset to be in the top left corner. Again, this was because of the fact that the front door was going to have to be open, and it just made sense to have it 0 on that portion of it. I switched my material to acrylic, and that was about all I had to do on setup. I went with millimeters too instead of inches just because my calipers, I typically measure everything in millimeters. So for Toolpaths, I did 2 different Toolpaths. I did one for the actual crest, which I used a smaller 0.06 inch bit, or number 111 from Nomad if you go with their end mills. And for the outside, or the rectangle that was going to be cut out, I used a number 101 ball nose, which is a 0.125 of an inch end mill. I did that so that way it would be a little bit more precise for the actual engraving and a little bit wider and deeper cuts with the bigger end mill. And that was it. Once I was done with that, I went ahead and saved the G-code to my desktop and I hopped over to Carbide Motion. This is an acrylic sheet that I picked up from Home Depot. Again, it was 8 by 10 inch, 3 millimeter thick. I then peeled off the protective layer on the acrylic on one side, and I used some double-sided adhesive that was provided with the Nomad to stick onto the back. I put 5 pieces on, but I only needed 3, but the ones on the other side I'll end up using later to create a different faceplate, which is a cool thing with this. You can just swap out the faceplates to whatever you want, so it's not permanently stuck. Then I did my best to place it aligned with the top of the build plate or the build area on my wasteboard, and put as much pressure as I could to ensure that this thing would not slip. It held incredibly well though. I had no issues with slipping using the double-sided adhesive. It's been working out really well for me. I've been really happy with this adhesive that came with it. I think the brand is 3M. Then in Carbide Motion, I loaded up my zelda.nc file and hit start and let the magic happen. So again, I went with most of the predefined speeds and depth per cut on this. I think it ended up making 5 passes for each part, with a step down of roughly 0.2 of a millimeter each rotation. So all in all, I think that for the engraving it was about a 20 to 30 minute job, although I could have gone much quicker. Also, again, with the vacuuming, I definitely did overkill. I was constantly vacuuming because this was my first time milling acrylic, worried that the little bits or the acrylic dust would cause issues or scratches on the surface of the acrylic. When I ended up running a second cut, I didn't vacuum at all the whole time. It didn't cause any issues at all. So again, this is a learning experience for me. So once it was done with the initial emblem or crest, I swapped out to the larger end mill, and it did probably 6 to 8 passes in order to cut out the rectangle. I did have it go a little bit into the wasteboard just to ensure that it did cut through and that there wasn't going to be any issues with me trying to remove the acrylic. I was extremely ecstatic with how it turned out for my first time using acrylic. Again, I wasn't sure whether it was going to be a total wash, but no, it turned out amazing. The Carbide Nomad did a stellar job. So once this was done, it was time to move on to the 3D modeling aspect of it. I wanted to 3D model a dock that the whole existing dock could sit on top of. It would have a hollow chamber or cavity underneath it, so that way the slack from the RGB LEDs could fit into. And luckily, these RGB LEDs I picked up from Walmart a long time ago are USB powered, so they just are powered on by the switch when the switch is on. And there's a little remote so you can turn it off remotely, which is also very cool. Relatively simple design. I just created a notch for the acrylic to be able to drop into. Again, a chamber down below. I created a little bed so that way the LEDs could stick onto underneath where the acrylic would be at. And I created a couple of little circular cutouts on the side and the back of this, so that way the cable or the wire from the LEDs could pop out the side and then pop in the back, so I could hide much of the excess cable as possible. I could have cut the actual USB and shortened it, but I was a little bit lazy and just decided to hide it underneath. Then I found a Switch logo online, which I took into Photoshop and did something similar to earlier. Created an SVG, imported that SVG into Fusion 360, and then I decided to basically just reverse extrude into the 3D model. Originally, I wasn't planning on doing 2 colors. I was just going to have it kind of subtracted from the material, but I later on decided to go ahead and print out the Switch logo in white, which I think turned out awesome. So it did need quite a lot of supports, but Kira did a fantastic job of generating these, and they were very, very easy to remove after the fact. I believe I did 0.3 millimeter layer height. I did this in PLA. Reason why I did 0.3 and not 0.2 was I kind of, again, was wanting this to be done and didn't really want to wait more than 8 hours. So I loaded this up on the Ender 3, which is my primary machine that I use now, and 8 hours later it was done, and it did a really, really great job. For the material, I just used Matter Hacker's Build Series Black PLA. So I tried to take this off with one hand. I have my flex plate, so the build plate's just held on with magnets, and I just bent the build plate, causing the print to free itself from the build surface, and it was good to go. I shoved some needle nose pliers into the bottom of the print to just grab onto that support material, and again, it came out really clean. I didn't catch that on video, but I wish I had, because I typically don't like supports, but man, it just did a really good job of coming off. Then I extruded the Switch logo into 3 different parts that I printed out on the Ender 3 in white. I used some super glue, which was Bob Smith Industries. I got off Amazon. Highly recommended. It's really, really, really good super glue, and it's what we use at work. And it sticks incredibly well. I was using Gorilla Glue super glue, but this just seems to dry a lot quicker, especially with PLA. And once I'd assembled everything and glued on that Switch logo, this was the end result, which I think looks freaking awesome. And again, with the faceplate, you can just pull it up. It's stuck in place really hard, but you can just pop it out and swap it to a different faceplate if that is what you wish. So I'll go ahead and upload this file to Thingiverse for anyone that wants to 3D print it. Again, you will need a CNC machine though to actually mill out the acrylic. But I think this turned out awesome. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below, and I can't wait to show you guys some more projects that combine CNCing with 3D printing. As always, thank you guys for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Peace, guys.